Alexis.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Today we're going to be talking about tipping.
Excellent.
So, there are two meanings of the word to tip. What is the difference between can you give me some tips and can you give me a tip?
One, can you give me some tips, advice? Can you give me some
Advice.
advice or recommendations? Can you give me a tip? Tip me money. Tip as in at a restaurant.
Right. Okay. So, at a restaurant, after you've had a good meal or good dinner, you'd pay a little percentage on top. How do you normally deal with that, Alexis? Do you sort of round the money up to the nearest big number? Like if it's 122, you'll bring it to 130, or how do you, or do you always pay 10% or 20%? What are the rules nowadays on tipping?
I try to follow the standard tipping rules of where I'm at. So in
Mm,
the US, tipping is a big part of the culture and it's expensive. 20 to 25% tips
wow.
is the standard. 10% is a little rude. It's the minimum. So here in Ecuador, it is, I mean, a 10% tip is really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm happy to tip that. It's interesting for me because I worked in restaurants and I worked for tips. And then I see here in Ecuador where the tips are less, but the service is still really good, the customer service. So
I've
it's interesting
noticed
how it
here in
works.
Colombia that there are these places that, like these lunch restaurants, and they have a fixed price.
Hmm.
They call it a menú del día, the menu of the day, and they will give you a drink, usually a meal, and if you're very lucky, you might get a little like
Dessert.
cookie or something, at the end.
Yeah.
And you don't tip in these places, even though the people who work there probably need it the most. However, if you go to a fancy restaurant, you're expected to tip everywhere, which I
Yeah,
find
I
quite strange.
understand completely. When I first moved here to Ecuador, I was tipping what I was used to, and they
Mm.
would actually say they wouldn't accept it, or they would give it, give me most of it back because it just doesn't happen here. But yeah, we have those places, and like here, lunch is very cheap, a couple dollars. So I try to give them a dollar just because they bring me my little limes and make sure I have what I need.
Yeah, yeah, and they often give freebies as well. A freebie is
Yeah.
when they give you something you didn't even ask for. It's like the opposite of a tip. They'll bring you another lemonade, even though you've only asked for one. They'll bring you a
Yeah,
second one. Yeah.
I was eating at a parrillada, like a grill the other day, and I always order an extra salad because they have good salad. And she said, and she was adding up the food, and I said, "Oh, and my salad," and she said, "Ah, it's okay."
It's
I was like,
nice.
"Oh,
Yeah, a
thanks."
freebie. Nice little freebie. When I lived in Korea, there was a very different aptitude towards tipping. It was considered really offensive to try and
Hmm.
tip because tips in Korea are sort of seen like charity. If you try, it's
Oh,
kind of like throwing coins at somebody. Imagine you decide to go to the park and you sit in the grass and have a picnic, and somebody walks past you and throws a sandwich at your feet. You'd be like, well, I'm not poor. How dare you? So there's that kind of concept. Well, what last time I was there, that was 2012. It may have changed since then, but I noticed that, and
hmm.
they would actually give you the opposite. If you were a frequent visitor of a restaurant, a frequent guest, they would often bring you Coca Colas and little things for free. It's just a way of saying
Really?
thank you for your patronage, thank you for choosing
Ah,
our restaurant amongst all the others. And it's kind of like loyalty points, when you it's
yeah,
Starbucks. If you
yeah,
shop there a lot, you get a free coffee. It was quite nice, actually. It's very sweet.
yeah. Very different culture from the U.S. We're like,
Very.
we'll take it,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, yeah. Now, I've never worked in a job where I've ever received tips. As an English teacher, it's very, very uncommon that a student be like, "Let me venue a few dollars for a fantastic class." I don't think that's ever happened. What about and before that, I used to work in construction and fishing, and there weren't a lot of
Oh,
tips. I've never had a homeowner climb up a ladder and say, "Here's €20, great job." It's never happened. But what about you, Alexis? Have you ever worked in a field where tipping is common?
yeah, absolutely. I bartended throughout college, and when I lived in the US, I waited on tables. And then when I moved to Central America, while I was doing my scuba diving course, at night I would work in a Argentinian restaurant, and it was quite, I have to be honest, it was a learning curve for me because I had to learn how to go from working for my own tips to sharing tips with everybody and making sure the work is fair and that we work together. And it was very strange at first for me to get used to.
Was that frustrating if you felt that you were doing a great job that night
Yeah,
and someone else wasn't pulling their weight? Why are you taking my
exactly.
money?
Exactly. You're over there standing doing nothing, and I'm like, well, I was, I speak English, so I was always the ones at the table and
Mm,
entertaining the guests kind of. So I made an agreement with them like, look, I don't mind talking, I'm good at it, but you have to, I'm not going to bring food to tables, like you have to help me. So,
right.
and
Okay.
after that we worked. Honestly, after time, I appreciated that system more because people would help you and not be like, "Oh, in the US you ask for any help, no one wants to help you because they're not getting paid for that." But in the other situation where you're sharing tips, everyone's getting paid the same, so you have to work
Right. You're
together.
all collaborating on the same project, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's
So
nice. Yeah. Yeah. I'm tipping isn't big in Ireland. You can tip, but you're never really expected to tip. Generally, the waiters are usually quite well paid. Like, um,
oh, okay.
like I think you have a subsidized payment for minimum wage in the US. So, but I think in Ireland most people would earn maybe 12 or 15 euro an hour. So if you work in a restaurant, you'll eat, without any tips, you'll still leave after the day with maybe 100 120 euro, which is pretty good.
That's the complicated part of it in the US is the wage for servers and bartenders hasn't changed in a long time. And typically the reason is because you don't have to claim your cash tips. So you get a little tax break. But for example, I got paid $3.25 an hour, but I made $100, $200 in tips a day. So it
Right.
was pretty good. But not every day was like that. You'd have certain Mondays or Tuesdays where it's slow
Quiet
and you
days.
only make 20, $40, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's very different because if somebody is being paid a livable wage, then they don't really need tips. I don't like tips really personally because I've never received them. That's the main one. But also, I don't like the idea of the restaurant outsourcing that to the
Yeah.
customer. It's
Pay for
weird
your
and
employees.
yeah,
Pay your employees.
yeah,
Don't
yeah, yeah,
make the client do it.
yeah,
I'm a reformed person about tipping because I used to be like tip service workers because I was one. But now that I've gotten away, like I don't miss tipping. I see the service is still good. It doesn't have to be so expensive. It doesn't
sure.
have to be 20, 25%. I think, you know, tipping's fine with me, but in the US it makes your dining experience more expensive. And
Mm.
I mean, the
Yeah.
service is really good. It does give you a great service, and they're really attentive. But so are other
Well,
places.
I wanted to ask you that. Like, if somebody is not really very attentive and they do the bare minimum, but you still receive your food, do you tip people based on their
Yeah,
performance? Yes, you do.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I remember two times of like as an adult living in the U.S. where I didn't tip someone because it's
Right.
very like it had to go really bad,
Like
and it
that
went
that's
really bad.
basically the equivalent of filing a complaint, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's bad service, you still tip 10% because it's respectful.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's
But 20% would be okay, mediocre, and 30% would be yeah.
20% is you did good. 25% is you did amazing. But people that have money, they'll tip like 50%,
Wow.
100%,
Okay.
just to kind of, well, to be
Right.
nice and also to kind of
Sure.
boast, I would say.
Like I would tip someone maybe 15% because my standard would be to tip someone nothing.
Mm,
It's just how it is in Ireland. But if the person was exceptional and they learned my name and they were
yeah.
telling jokes and this is a bit embarrassing, they're incredibly attractive. This does help. I would go above and beyond, but my default would be you get paid to work here. Good luck. That's it. You're on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I have mixed feelings about it now.
I understand. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. So thank you so much, Alexis, for telling our audience everything you know and how everything you feel about tipping culture and how it
Yes.
differs amongst all the countries you've lived in.
Of course. Yeah, still tip your servers, you know.
Or don't.
However it is. I would say if you're traveling, ask around, you know, what should I tip here so you're
But
aware of it.
if you're never coming back to that restaurant, why not just be a complete sociopath and not tip anything and then never come back?
And then they're like, "We did so good. What was the problem?"
Yeah. And then also lie about where you're from. Blame another country.
Write it on TripAdvisor. It was the worst. All right. Thanks for having me. And
My
I
pleasure.
will
Thanks for
talk to you
having me too.
soon.
All the best. Bye-bye.